So why didn't David kill Goliath when he had the chance? This is one of those questions that comes up all the time. The big question. Why didn't David just do the job and end it right then and there? Okay, here's what we know for a fact. David was young. David was a shepherd. David had 5 older brothers who were fighting in King Saul's army. And on this particular day, his father sent him to bring some food and supplies to his brothers. So David left his sheep in the care of somebody else and went off to check on his brothers. It was during this trek from his sheep pastures to where his brothers were camped out that he heard the Philistines taunting and shouting and insulting the Israelites and their God. And in walks Goliath. He was huge, 7 and 2 cubits tall, about 9 feet. He's got armor on. He's carrying a spear. He's carrying a javelin. And he's basically saying, hey, Israel, pick somebody. Your best guy, come and fight me. If your guys think you're so tough, you have a God, I don't. You have a God, I don't. If you really believe in your God, tell your best fighter, your champion, your best man, come and fight me, and nobody's stepping up. And this goes on for 40 days. Nobody's doing anything. Then David shows up, and I love this line in the text. When David heard the Philistines' words, he was angry. So this isn't just a random kid. This is a kid who hears this giant bully gloating and boasting and having a good time at the expense of his people. And that made David angry. That's a good thing. We shouldn't be indifferent to the suffering of others. We should care. That's a good thing. It stirred something inside of David, a righteous anger. But then David says something that's interesting. He says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that dares to challenge the armies of the living God? Okay, now think about this. David was a shepherd, okay? This wasn't like he was an elite warrior. And I'm guessing that the warriors of Israel, if they even paid attention to this guy, thought he was kind of cute. Like, this little shepherd boy thinks he can fight Goliath. And I'm sure they probably laughed at him. But David was not thinking that he could defeat Goliath in a fight. He said, I come to you in the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I'm sure that he will deliver you into my hand today, and I will kill you and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of your men and the carcasses of your army to the birds and the wild animals of the land. So David comes out, and he doesn't talk about how he's going to beat Goliath one-on-one in a sword fight or a spear fight. He talks about God. He talked about God's going to give Goliath into his hands. Okay, let's keep going. So David then goes and gets a stone, pulls out his sling, slings a stone, and hits Goliath in the forehead. And he hits him so hard that the stone just kind of sticks in his forehead. And then David runs over while Goliath is stumbling around trying to pull the stick out of his head. And David pulls out his sword and stabs him in the neck and cuts off his head. And then David took the head, and the Philistines saw it, and they were so freaked out they turned tail and ran away. The text says that the battle was joined that day, and the Lord saved David wherever he went. So the text never says that David killed all the Philistines, but it does say that David defeated them. They were beaten that day. They weren't able to stand against the armies of Israel anymore. So let's answer the question. Did David kill Goliath? Yes, he did. David killed Goliath. But if you read beyond that moment, there are other enemies that show up. There are other giants. And David doesn't always go out and beat these guys in a one-on-one sword fight or a spear fight. Sometimes David needs help. He needs other people. He needs Saul's support. He needs Jonathan's support. He needs Abner's support. He needs God's help. So no, David didn't always beat the giants that he faced in his life, but on that particular day he did. Now, what did David learn from that day? Well, I think he learned that when he relied upon God, when he trusted God, when he put his faith in God, that God would honor that faith. God would honor that trust. God would honor that belief. And so many times in the Old Testament, we see David doing just that. He puts his faith in God, he trusts in God, and he sings songs about it. He writes psalms about it. We get to read them. We get to learn from him how to trust in God. We also learn, though, that we can't just rely upon our faith in God and sit back. We also have to do something. David had to go out there. He had to get the stone. He had to load the sling. He had to throw the sling. He had to run after Goliath. He had to pull out his sword. He had to plunge the sword into Goliath's neck. He had to cut off his head. So our faith doesn't mean that we sit back and don't do anything. Our faith means that we trust in God's power and his promises. And then we go out there and we do what we can, and we trust that God will honor our faith and that he will work through us. And sometimes, just like with David, he will give the victory into our hands. All right, so controversial take coming. Are you ready? Here it is. The reason that David didn't kill Goliath when he had the chance is because he wasn't supposed to kill Goliath when he had the chance. Why? Because Goliath was a metaphor. Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. When David first shows up, he sees the Israelite soldiers and he asks them what's going on. And they tell him, as long as that guy stays out there, we can't do anything. As long as he's out there, we can't get past him. We can't do anything until he's dealt with. So to the Israelites, Goliath was an obstacle. To the Israelites, Goliath was a barrier to their success. And so they were looking at Goliath as an obstacle to be removed, as a barrier to be broken down. And David does remove him. David does break that down. But I think there's another way of looking at this story. If we look at the original language of the text, the Hebrew text, we find out that Goliath's name actually means he who heaps up. Okay? And the idea there is that he's heaping up trouble. He's heaping up strife. He's heaping up insult. He's heaping up opposition. And so I think that Goliath was more than just a giant. I think that Goliath was a metaphor for all of the opposition that Israel faced. And I think that when David killed Goliath, he didn't just kill a single guy. He killed all of the opposition that Israel faced. So that whenever we face obstacles, whenever we face barriers, whatever it is that's blocking us from getting to the promised land, from getting to the place that God wants us to be, we can slay that dragon. We can slay that monster. We can slay that giant. Now, I know that that's a very symbolic interpretation of the story, but I think it fits. And I think that that gives us hope when we're facing seemingly insurmountable odds, that we can overcome those odds if we put our faith in God and if we trust in God's power and His promises. So the question for us is, what is your Goliath? What is that thing that's blocking you from getting to the promised land, from getting to the place that God wants you to be? And I want to encourage you to slay that giant. Go for it. Take the risk. Trust in God and His promises and go do what you need to do. Because once you slay that giant, you will be able to look back and realize that it wasn't really a giant at all. It was just a metaphor. It was just a dream. It was just something that you made up in your head. God bless you. God love you. God's watching over you. And until next time, thanks for watching.